Okay. Good glorious morning or afternoon, lovers. It really depends when you're watching this and where. But I'm so excited to be here today with Aaron Micheal. Now, we connected about over a year ago, or a year ago when I was in Canada. And we've had chats and all of that stuff. But Aaron, what I really appreciate about and why I wanted to bring Aaron in today and have a conversation is, for me as a woman, it's so amazing to be able to have a man that's doing this work as part of the conversation. So Aaron, would you like to introduce yourself and talk about what you do, and then also talk about how you got into this work, like working with sexuality and bodies?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I am the author of Optimal Sex Life, and I've also put together some video courses in regards to DeArmouring and different aspects of how to really, say, update our sexual education, where desire, pleasure, and orgasm isn't just something that we do as an afterthought or an itch to scratch, but actually can be a guiding force in our life that brings virility, vitality, and at the same time, health. So I have been primarily working with men, women, and couples as well, really how to begin to optimize their sex lives, and that can be anything from releasing pain to really overcoming numbness, and then eventually exploring one's pleasure potential. And it's not so much about providing one way or one answer, but showing that there is a wide variety of options that are before us, and then exploring, our own unique individuality within that, and then learning on a solo level, then how do we then bring that into a partnership? And the beautiful thing is, Melissa, is that whereas oftentimes I think the male and the female body are pitted as opposites and they have to take turns pleasing one another, that this might seem to be the case when both bodies are closed, but actually when we're open, we're very much similar. And that does not, we're definitely equal, but that does not mean the same, because we are complements to one another. And then in that complement, we supplement and can create something new, a new dynamic in relationships that really calls out the excellence in each of us. So in regards to this, speaking with my men's work, there are ways that we can use DeArmouring, or really, if you want to say, resensitizing the cock to truly be the member that it was meant to be, which is a very different depiction, I think, than oftentimes the sword or the aggressor that is the metaphor we use around the cock, but that there are healing attributes to it, both for ourselves and for others. And beyond that, something that is actually the key to unlocking all sorts of insights and pleasures and magnificence in our partner's bodies.
Wow, thank you. Just as you were talking about this perception of the masculine energy of like being, having to go in, like how I say, it's like the pressure to penetrate. The masculine has the pressure to penetrate, to go in, to take over. And yesterday I heard I was listening to an interview yesterday on YouTube, and this one guy was saying, it's the masculine's work to not be the slayer in sex, but to be the shaman in sex.
Yes.
That created such a shift in my body also, just listening to that. Like I'm always speaking about these subjects, as you know, like we both are, but just also to hear it said in a different way. And I thought that was a really beautiful analogy. It's like coming where sex is not something that we do, it's a place that we go to. It's where we bring every single part of ourselves, and where we're willing to receive every single part of the other, no matter what that's like in the moment. Sex takes a lot of courage. Good sex. So how did you get into this work, Aaron?
Well, I ended up getting into this this work through my own personal life. I mean, it was I'd always had a slightly different take on on sex and sexuality. I mean, I actually didn't have an ejaculatory orgasm until I was 19, and didn't have sex until I was 21. I was actually thinking that I would wait till I was married, and I come from actually like a rather conservative Christian background, and and then I started to notice that there was something about sex that that I felt like really had a certain human potential to it that we weren't really tapping into, and so I had at a quite early age though I'd read books on massages and had read books on for instance I had the multi-orgasmic man when I was 16 was reading through, and so I began to do some of these. It was the summer when I was 18, and I started to do these different types of practices, and um, and so that kind of shaped the way in which I viewed sexuality just by reading the Taoistic perspective on it. And they have a whole series that later on about the reflexology and what it relates to, and this psychosomatic or psychosexual dimension, meaning that our psychology and our sexuality are related, and the somatic part meaning that it's also embodied. And so then later on, I mean, I began to do massages as an athlete, taking care of myself, helping out other fellow athletes. My mom also had burnt her arm with hot oil and helping me with my bicycle, and so I'd also taken care of her neck. And so I mean, I had that tactile training just by doing. And it was then when I went to university and started studying with linguistics and then looking into the cognitive sciences, which really have taken, the perspective that the mind and body are one, when I then became married. And at that same time, there was two things that were happening. One was with my wife's vagina started to go numb. And this was, after 4.5 years of being together. And the other aspect of that was I had also had a kidney stone and had felt that it had become lodged, and the doctors weren't really taking a look at it. And so I had always was looking for, I was then brought to try and find, well, what are some solutions to this, given the knowledge that I have, and knowing what type of knowledge I would have or what type of advice would be given if we just kind of went to traditional, more psychologists where the body isn't really considered. And a lot of these things are kind of written off then to be inside the head. And there was no amount of mindfulness practices that were going to bring this about. And so I then began a journey to find those answers in communities and whoever I could find that with. And I had come across a woman by the name of Susanna Rorsko, who was a midwife that specialized in trauma care, and she had learned a lot of techniques, also just having done massage and been involved in martial arts herself, that then she could notice that when women were having these traumatic either traumatic pregnancies, meaning rape, or very difficult deliveries, that with these touch techniques, she was able to help deliver the children with a lot less ease, or a lot more ease. And this then, she couldn't really write about it though, because, it's not a documented medical procedure. And so eventually she stepped out of that line of work. And when my wife and I had gone to get a tantra massage, and this is now, about 7 or 8 years ago, we then had gone to get a tantra massage, and this lady had recommended that when she had armor, is what she was speaking about, in the body, or specifically around the vagina, that she would go see this midwife. And that brought me to meet her. And it was interesting because at the same time, I had come across a Wilhelm Reich book, Character Analysis, that I was reading, that also, he's the man who started, or at least coined the term DeArmouring, and also the grandfather of the psychosomatic school of psychology. Freud didn't like him very much because he believed in touching and but then so I started having this academic side that had developed with this curiosity that then was being complemented at the same time through my meeting this woman. And from there, then beginning to apply those techniques that she had. It was a 6-hour introductory day. And when I'd actually originally asked her, hey, can I learn from you? She had said, she had given me a title of a book to go check out, which was an ISBN number. When I found that out, it was titled Ethics. And I was like, okay, I get what you're saying. Because she's like, what is a man wanting to do and work in this? Now we're best friends, and we work together. And this is the beauty, though, is that with that, then something else started, because I then just started to give away sessions, and I was doing this with myself as well as working then on others. And that developed over the course of a year. About 100 people had come through the door, and it really began to incorporate breathing and touch and voice and movement in a very specific way, that, as opposed to working in opposition and being based around tension allows the person to go into a more state of relaxed arousal, and that allows for the release of pain, the resensitizing of numbness, and then a greater exploration of pleasure potential that allows a man and a woman to both be not just one directional in giving or receiving, but actually to be able to be an active receiver and to be an adaptive giver, which really then allows for the bodies to meet and have this joining where they can then go farther. And that is complemented with this DeArmouring and resensitizing process, because then, much like a finger or a hand, you can actually navigate where you are inside and actually stream into and feel that energetic shift between the woman when she is actually at a no versus a yes, versus a come in versus come in farther or go out farther, or join the head to the cervix or pull. I mean, like, all this, like, whole thing that then becomes available when you then coordinate yourself with a lover. But this needs to be then resensitized to have that. And then really it's about following the body from that point of view. And then things are, you share notes and explore from there.
I could just talk about this stuff all day. My heart opens when we start bringing all of these subjects to light. I wanted to ask you, so as a woman with my experience with DeArmouring and receiving DeArmouring myself, for me as a woman, through all of the sacred menstruation work that I do with my other, with my business partner in Australia, and what I've learned through her, and what when I'm speaking to women about DeArmouring and men, teaching men how to do sacred pussy massage for women, we're looking at 3 to 7. I mean, because in menstruation we talk about 7, and in sex they talk about 3 generations. So and I know for myself, especially my very first DeArmouring, I actually released a hip issue I'd had for 15 years, and it was past life stuff that was being released, like all of the visions I was having, the stuff that was going on, the pain in my body that was energetic pain. So for me it was generational trauma. That, because that's also what we talk about with women, is like the numbness and the pain inside of the vaginal walls. It's like not putting a story to it. When we're having sex and fear comes up, tears come up, anger comes up, we don't need to put a story to it. We just need to breathe through it and allow our body to move through it, because it could easily be our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, our mothers' stuff that we bring in utero. So I wanted to hear from you with the aspects from the masculine. So when we're talking about DeArmouring, and also to where we're in the man, where are we DeArmouring? What are we DeArmouring? And are you aware of that, also the energetic lineage for the masculine body as well, and what you think about that? Because if we have it for the feminine, my question is, surely the masculine also has those levels.
Well, I haven't been able to calculate how many generations exactly each person is dealing with. But I mean, I definitely have people will have experiences that are, I mean, put it this way, in terms of the reflexology, they match perfectly between the vaginal canal and the cock. So you'd have the cervix lining up with the center section of the glands, or the head of the cock, and that would be the heart. And then you have around the outside, which would be the lungs, and then around the outside of the cervix, you also have that last section there of the vagina. That would also then be the lungs. And then coming forward, you then have, which would be the spleen, and this would be then from underneath the glands down like the first third of the shaft. And then you have the next section, which would be the liver. And then last you have is the very base of the cock and the testicles, which would be the kidney, and that lines up with the vaginal entrance, which then is also with the kidneys, and then the G pad, and or I say pad, but you could say G spot, or the urethral sponge, which is then situated as well, and that then lines up as well with the liver in that first third then of the penis. And in terms of the emotions, because the Taoists were looking at this as a psychosexual sort of model, that you then have a balance that you're trying to achieve. And when they would say these organs are out of balance, then you would have different emotions that would be out of balance versus in balance. So for instance, with the liver, you have anger and greed versus instead of generosity and kindness. And it's not just women that when they go into these orgasmic states where they then release their ejaculate, go from anger and greed into generosity and kindness, which is a wonderful state to have your partner in. It's also the same for men. And then we talk about as well this heart opening and the ability to work with that. A lot of times, if the heart is closed in a manner you're emotionally shut off, then also you're going to be having more of a buildup around the head of the penis and not be able to actually have that energy flowing, which then will lead to, ejaculating more quickly is one of the things that can happen, or just not having that much sensation. And so then reverting to needing to be very hard with friction and use it more like a battering ram, as opposed to actually getting in touch with some of the subtle energies that then build to a much greater effect. I think there's also something to say too, just about the fact that the heart has the fire energy, and it's talking about such things such as empathy and courage and compassion, whereas when it's closed, then it's more about hastiness, which then you get this battering ram thing. But it is a fire element, whereas if you're looking down further towards the kidneys, which would be at the entrance of the vagina or the base of the cock, this has to do with calmness and relaxation as opposed to fear and anxiety. And where is it that women hold their fear and anxiety, and where do they need to be penetrated, from a state of being calm so that the bodies can then coordinate? So that's why it would make sense where you take the head of the cock and you actually do not enter yet, and you just breathe together and hold that space, and then wait for the vagina actually to actively receive and invite in, so that you have this fire and the water element able to join. Whereas for the man, even though they match up once inside, they're coming from opposite ends of the spectrum, because whereas a man actually, most anxious and fearful would be to get kicked in the junk, or even the word junk is a horrible word for it. I mean, just kicked in the balls and the testicles. And so
it's like a big box of jewels.
Precisely. So, and you want them to be treated with this calmness there, which most men are going to understand. And so if an understanding is there of how to approach the vaginal entrance in the same way that one would approach their own testicles, this would be another way of understanding how that psychology matches up as well, to guide not just with physical techniques, but also an emotional and psychological understanding of what's happening. And there's different layers that one can start to do this as you begin to resensitize. because you start to work with really stretching and creating spaces. So that way you then begin to have a much greater control over your cock, and you start to use your hips and your glutes in ways that will, even in the same way you might hear with the jade egg practice, that a woman's vagina can start to do this, a man's cock can also pulse out from the center and grow this way and send energy into a woman. It is not even this myth that, you know, a cock is there to be hard and stiff. That's like a wall. It's not very responsive. So these type of things instead is that there's other metaphors that we need to bring into what a cock's potential is, to fully grasp, you know, what it is capable of doing. And these type of practices give the sensations to then begin exploring with different variables to have different results.
You know, one of my most favorite ways to explain, you know, the energy of the masculine going inside to the feminine is like he's bringing, like this is his rod of light that's bringing light to her darkness, her universe, the layers of generation, the layers of past life, the layers of stuff that she has no idea even yet how to put words to. In his absolute gift, he's coming in, and with his strength and his resolve and his, you know, ability to hold space no matter how it unfolds, it's his gift. It's his absolute gift. So yeah, I really love how you're speaking about it as well. So can you explain to the beautiful men that are watching exactly what is, if because you have, like, you know, you have created this incredible course for the man to de-armor his cock. Now, what I also understand, it's not just the cock, it's de-armoring the testicles, de-armoring the pelvis, the whole area. So can you just, you know, explain exactly what a man is doing? Like because it's that whole construct. What's, you know, he's physically doing exercises to his cock, to his pelvis, to his testicles, and what that is creating, like what results that is getting for him in doing that.
On like a fascial level or on a like muscle level, you are, or the erectile tissue, the same way that you have tension that you would hold in your back, for instance, and you would then be taking different ways, and not necessarily movement with the massage, but holding different points. So that way then as you then breathe into it and relax, you actually will have releases of tension, so that then the muscle can relax. Except it's not just muscle though that's happening. We're talking about the fascia here, which are like the connective tissues between everything. It would be like if you were to take an orange and take all the juice out and just have the strings there, that web that exists in the body, and that's the fascia. And so if something is tight over here, then it's going to affect something else over here. So when working with the genitals, like any other part of the body, especially since we don't pay really direct attention to it, or if the only time we do is just a hard in and out motion or jamming backwards, then we're not actually lengthening out and stretching. It would be the same as always having our arm jolted in, as opposed to actually stretching it out. So that on a terms of just a mechanical level gives for that range of motion. But when you're also open on a mechanical level, then you're able to sense more as well. And when you're able to sense more, you're able to do more, because you're getting more information, and you begin to develop a different way to interact both with yourself as well as others. And this will then lead towards being able to last longer. But it's not just about lasting longer, it's also about feeling more. I mean, most women are like, oh, I want more orgasms, and men are like, I want to last longer. Well, once you kind of get past that initial phase, women are like, yeah, okay, more orgasms is great, but I want that to go on for longer than the regular 20 minutes where I would normally numb out. And the man's like, okay, yeah, lasting longer is great, but if I actually want to feel and enjoy this to continue going on for hours, then I need to be able to enjoy, to feel more too. So at that point, then there becomes this merging, and to be able to have as well deep levels of being able to tend to oneself sexually. Not only does it boost our immune system, but it also has that effect on our partner, but it also then will have an ability for ourselves to be able to do that, so that we're not dependent and needy off of a partner, but are actually bringing something to to the interaction that then reshapes the normal orientation, where a partner is like, okay, I'll gift you this because you've done that. Now it's like, where's my medicine? Or, you know, where is that cure I need? Please come to me. And it creates a very different dynamic there, where also the masculine becomes deeply respected and feels deeply respected, or just, I mean, whatever your feminine, masculine, whatever your body is, ultimately is what we're talking about. But specifically now, in terms of the kind of post Me Too world, where some men are like, I don't actually know how to embody my sexuality in a way that is healthy and constructive, because that's not what's really being portrayed, or even we don't really have an archetype for that. I mean, now we're hearing sexual healer, shaman, this type of thing, but even then, you know, then there's to then be lifted to that level also then creates a little bit of speculation about, oh, what are you doing? So, you know, some are hiding under a rock and not really knowing how, or not even hiding under a rock, but how does one really present that, though, in a way that is accepted? And I think now more than ever, though, there's actually a lot of women such as yourself who are championing, you know, the men to come out as a need and as a necessary, because it's so deeply longed for. And that's why I love, and I've always loved the work that I've seen you do, because you bring such honor to the man. I mean, it's that in and of itself is tremendously arousing, because it's that embodiment that then also calls this out of us men, and is really the counterpart to that relational dynamic that we don't get to see in media, which is, you know, the woman either kind of gifting a man or nagging, or only going for assholes, you know, that then don't deserve it. But that there's someone who actually calls forth the excellence in a man. It begins this perpetual cycle of energy that then also affects your own partner as well, and both can guide and learn from each other. But there's a tremendous amount of benefits, I think, that trickle from this, as you then also take that drive and added energy then and pour it into your vocational life, whatever that might be, and bring that vigor that you have inside the bedroom as well as outside. And again, the importance of the self-practice isn't just so that you can do things with a partner, but that you actually, the same way that you do mindfulness or any kind of training, are bringing a balance inside oneself as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Can you just speak a little bit more to the masculine's emotional release through this work? Like because this is, to this day, it's still, really like softens my heart. And I find it quite, I find it quite sad, actually. But when women talk about they don't want to cry when they're having sex, they feel like they're too much. They feel like they're this, and they think something's wrong with them if they feel emotions coming up. Can you talk a little bit more towards the masculine around that? So if they're going to be, when they're de-armoring their cock and their pelvis, and they're honoring their own energy and their own self-practice for their own body, then what can happen, like the emotions that can come up and how to work through them. And also speak about breath. I've sort of, I've heard you speak about that quite a bit, but it's such an important aspect, is this breath aspect.
Yes.
In self-practice and in sex.
I mean, the most essential, I think, aspect of any embodiment practice, be it athletes, be it, just in terms of survival, it's without oxygen that, the body shuts down the fastest, even more so than water, which is much more so than food. And so this at least should be a clue to us that this is quite vital. Also in terms of our autonomic actions versus, our parasympathetic versus our sympathetic nervous system, and what is automated versus what isn't. I mean, the breath is what's really in between the two, and allows us to regulate going back and forth. It's the key to meditations, and lo and behold, it's also the key to really activating our pelvic floor and learning to work with our perineum and our genitals in a way that that they are not stagnant. I mean, we have this idea that a woman's vagina is yay long and this versatile, and it's kind of drawn out with walls, and a man's cock is this long, and then you find the perfect one that matches, and that's ta-da, how it goes. When in reality, energetically, you can extend and pull in your energy. At the same time, you can also lengthen as you learn to then have more relaxation in the cock and have much richer, fuller, harder, energetic, vibrant orgasms. And in terms of the woman, also too, the versatility of lowering the cervix and coming to meet and join in this dance that happens, it really throws the old model of sex, which is just about bigger, better, harder, faster. I think would probably be the main factors. Those go out the window, and all of a sudden it becomes much more about being aware, being in tune with yourself and with your partner, that then these different effects start to be created. And throughout that, also, that comes with having an openness to whatever emotions might come up. So, for instance, when feeling hasty or when feeling not apathetic, this is also where if a man is his energy, he might feel very open to be entering with his cock, but then where the woman or another man with a man or whatever is entering him in his heart, then that's actually where the man would be most likely to feel violated, which is oftentimes why after the man ejaculates and doesn't really feel attached to the person that they're with, then this is where the last thing they want to really do. And so they are not trying to go into a conversation, or if their lover's turning to like place their chest and look them in the eyes, that can seem extremely intrusive. Well, by working with these regions and our parts of the penis, then we start to be able to also work with corresponding emotions to each one of these areas. So then, for instance, like the lungs, which are the head of the penis and around the cock, the emotions that are dealt with here are, for instance, courage, and as opposed to feeling more of like laziness or depression. And then you'd have, like with the spleen, has to do with being centered, balanced in place of trust versus mistrust or imbalanced. And the liver, like I'd said earlier, is has to do with greed and rage, being released then when actually, and by released and working with it, I mean just actually taking the time to feel like, is this part tense? Is this part sore? Is this part in pain? And in the same way that you would release that pain from other parts of the bodies, especially by breathing into it. And there's a specific way of doing it that allows us to work with the body as opposed to muscling it. And I mean, this isn't anything that I think is so difficult that people can't do. It's just they need to get used to breathing and working with their touch in a conscious way to then have these effects that would then release, for instance, into the kindness and generosity, and then working lastly with, or firstly even with the kidneys, and noticing that then you can bring yourself to a state of calmness, a state of where you are not in a state of anxiety and fear. These are the type of emotions that you can then begin to work with and become much more in tune with, either in yourself, but also sensing them in another person. We often think that we should sort of create walls around ourselves to protect ourselves, but actually I think by being open to receiving information, we most accurately then can open and close ourselves to what we need to do. But it's not this kind of hard shell that's blind. It's one that's actually being sensual, meaning sensing out into sensing all that is around us and using that as a guide. And our cocks, our penises, whatever we want to, our wands of light, are just as much and especially rich in giving us information on, is this a good partner? Is this, like there's nothing wrong. And I think there's a guiltiness that some people have, and shame is another one for men, really, I think now, whereas maybe for 2 generations ago or 3 generations ago of men, where they were championed for going out and having sex with whomever, which caused a lot of insensitivities and beyond insensitivities, I mean, violations. Now that some of these things have been swung back, a lot of men probably don't really, what I've been running into, don't want to trust their desire, because it means that they could really get in trouble. And the question is because maybe they haven't really had a healthy way of being shown how to express that, or even know that there's actually many women out there that are calling for it, but in a way that is in coordination and being asked for, and how then to present that and live that out and embody this as a man, without shame, but also with the utmost respect. I think these are the type of things that society hasn't given the male body many answers into. And so this really starts to become a work about, and where we start off really is actually connecting our heart to our genitals, in that are we able to actually send love to this part of our body? And then lastly, are we able to take that part of our body and actually, from our cocks, send love back into our own hearts or into others? And then that's when we start to resensitize. And I don't mean just physical sensation, but emotional intelligence as well, that this isn't something of shame, but that our cocks actually can fill up with love, and that they can deliver and be something that gives deep, deep, deep love to somebody else, as opposed to being a vessel of taking pleasure, the one that gives.
Thank you. I was just, as my mind was, as I was listening to you, I find there's a lot of fear around being fully present, receiving and giving love just in the moment, where even that concept of love, loving where we are, loving the moment we're in, how it seems to culturally come with, we still have this huge essence. It's like, if I was to open myself so fully to someone and receive someone, that container of love means this lengthy construct. And what I really enjoy in, when this concept too of like meeting someone, the interview is actually speaking so openly and honestly of like, so what do you desire about this connection? And so often, like, I hear something different than what I'm expecting. Yeah. I get to express, so it's like the shame and the guilt of, and I think, like the dating apps are doing all of this stuff of like, okay, well, we're here to hook up, but we're not going to talk about it. I'm going to run away from it, instead of going, do you know what? I'm willing to give up my all tonight. I can't, tomorrow I start a new contract. Tomorrow I've got all this work on. I have children. I have this, I have whatever. I'm here fully tonight. I'm here fully here. These are my questions. These are my boundaries. These are my desires for this coming together, or I actually am really willing to see what this sex, if we connect well sexually, what this medicine of us connecting sexually takes us, whether it takes us for a couple of weeks, a month, or 3 months, and we can reassess. It's like this concept of marriage. We sign a contract and we're not revisiting that set of agreements every year. We've like signed it once, boom, 30 years later, we're not talking to each other as a couple because we never revisited the agreements. And it's also being able to have sex and love agreements.
Yeah.
So in that trust, that container of trust, because if we can't trust, if we feel like someone's withholding or we're withholding, we haven't spoken our truth, then we're hiding. And that also, as we know, closes down the heart, closes off our genitals never lie. And this is also, as you would know, like with the masculine, it's like they get, soft. There's nothing wrong with soft cock. It's such a beautiful thing, but there's so much shame around it. But also why couldn't I get a hard on? It's like, you're not listening to yourself. It's like the same thing. A woman's pussy doesn't lie, you know. It's like if her pussy's dry, before you slap lube on it, it's like asking questions. What do you need right now? You know, and that's one of my most favorite questions. Like even in a conversation, is like noticing a shift in energy. What do you need right now? You know, and I've had a guy go, I actually just need to take a walk around. He said, I've never had this conversation before. It's freaking me out, but I so know I have to be here. You know, so he took a walk. He's like, instead of like pushing and pushing and pushing and going, oh my God, he's freaking out. He's like, I need to take a walk. And he took a walk and he came back and said, right, throw it at me. I'm here. And it's just that question, the permission to ask for what we need. It can be a glass of water. It could be like, I fucking need my hair pulled. You know, it's like, oh, I need snacks. That's a good one for me. It's like, if we're like, it's like, yeah, look, you need to bring snacks and a huge jug of liquid. Like, are you serious? Like, my body's not a machine. And I think that's also one thing. I was having this conversation. I'm interviewing someone at the moment, you know, we're both interviewing each other and it's beautiful. We're just taking, okay, let's just have another talking date, you know, let's really feel into this, because we can just dive in. It can be hot and sweaty and whatever. And then it's like we're avoiding each other in the street, you know. But the, what was the question? Oh, the machine is like, our bodies are not a machine. You know, it's also really allowing the masculine to know that is like the pressure to perform, the pressure to penetrate, the pressure to have it all going on. It's like, I need to share with you, you know, how does your body work? What is the touch that you enjoy most? And in all different parts of the body, it's going to be different. And just being able to have those conversations brings trust, which allows the heart to soften. And that's, you know, I think it's shifting the shame. So I've just got to plug in my computer here. Shifting the shame of, this is actually what I really want. I just want a 2-week love affair. And I want it to be juicy. I want this. If I had it all my way, you know, we'd see each other every second night. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, when I leave town, I may send you 1 or 2, you know, messages, but then I move on to the rest of life. And what that gives is the other person the absolute ability to agree whether they're open to that or not. So we say, actually, do you know what? I know that's going to be really hard for me. I'm not the person. You know, thank you. Thank you for looking after your boundaries. Thank you for being honest. Or like, do you know what? That's exactly what I want to. It's like, I have 2 weeks. I have this time. For me, I can only meet twice a week. Like, are you okay with that? Like maybe, you know, 2-3 times a week, if it's really important to you.
Yeah.
Having these conversations where our heart's open. It's not, we're not standing on guard because I need to withhold this information because she's going to like shame me or he's going to think that I'm this, I'm that. And really being able to have heart open conversations where we feel safe to talk about our needs and ask for our needs to be met or put our needs on the table. And the other person feels so safe to be able to agree or not agree to that. You know, and that's why I love about this whole DeArmouring process is we are de-armoring. We're taking off the armor from this whole cultural and societal construct where we're not taught to really speak our truth. And that's why for me, the beauty of the DeArmouring process is coming back to truth, which takes courage and is vulnerable.
Because I think a lot of times we have reverted to these kind of mental simulations that we have in our head of how reality will go. And so we develop a fear of embracing the now due to, not because of the now, but actually the cultural expectations of what tomorrow must be, given whatever we would potentially do in the moment. When we are then free, though, to actually express, no, this is the moment that I'm defining in terms of that it is something that is singular, or that it even has ripple effects. But even let's say you do decide to keep this relationship going, but what is the energy towards? Is it, you know, does it have to be towards making a baby and having a house and the white picket fence? Or could it be that, you know, you have a lover that is super fueling you in your career towards to achieve the best in your life and to be able to be excellent at whatever it is that you're wanting to accomplish? Maybe it's using that force to go out and simply wear a dress or a suit, or to ask for that promotion, or go run a marathon. I mean, just et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I often find a lot of times that when people can look at sex as something that creates this energy, and that what they're creating together is towards something other than kind of the strictly unknown of what is there, then the mind is going to fill that in, which is left with the cultural norm of, okay, well, I guess it must mean this. And so then we have to ask, okay, well, are we going to do the dance of moving in together, etc.? But once it's established that actually this is what I'm wanting to accomplish in my life, and let's use it towards that, or even just to celebrate one another for the miracle of, out of all the people in the world that we have met, and we have this moment here where our bodies are in a full yes, and we'll just celebrate that just to feel alive, to be alive. Then all of a sudden we have a whole new set of opportunities to really take control of an aspect of our life and wield it in a way that is most beneficial. And I think a lot of times what can stop us from doing that is if we do have, you know, even in our own lifetimes, even, I mean, there is the whole generational thing, but just the bombardment of images of what this one bodied sex is supposed to be like, or what they're not like, or the easiest way to interpret them. These kind of misunderstandings, we can become so inundated in them that we really can lose, or just never have really been given a positive compass on how to embody it any other way. But then once we have that experience, I think that is one of the things about that's so amazing about the work that you are doing, is that when you give that experience to somebody, it isn't otherly. It's only otherly because we've become unaccustomed to receiving it. But once we receive it, it's like more of a, oh, this is actually a coming home to how it should be. And in that sense, everything makes much more sense, and the learning curve and process ultimately isn't something that you're learning that is foreign to you, but that you're actually learning that is actually really at home inside yourself, and that potential's always been there. It's just never having really been able to see how it all comes together. But like riding a bicycle, once you get that feeling of what it's like, you know, you remember that for life.
Yeah, yeah. It's coming to me. It's coming home to where sex is medicine. It's our medicine, where we shift our stuff, and you know, it's just reflecting the reason I sort of did a really beautiful deep breath in. It's just that whole when a man can receive, he has the courage to be vulnerable, like, and it's strength, you know, there's so much strength. And, you know, the feminine, one of the biggest things, women find it really hard to receive. You know, we're very defensive and fearful on so many aspects that comes from generational stuff. But yeah, it's the biggest gift. It to me is like, it lights me up so much when a man can receive and just fully receive. You know, I receive so much when that is happening. So yes.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys actually are going out there and trying to prove to they can either give or to get. And actually, if they maybe took the time to feel into themselves and felt, oh, you know what, actually, I'm feeling tired, and I could use a recharge. And once that is stated in a way that is either just open to the woman to decide, they would probably be surprised how much work they're doing to get something that is probably not only coming. The only reason it's not coming to them is because you can't force someone to give. You have to just open yourself to receive. And then all of a sudden you find that probably there's a plethora of people out there very willing, and just waiting actually to be able to pour themselves in if they would just allow that to happen. But again, that's not how male courtship is portrayed to be. Even if men want to do that, they feel that they have to fluff their feathers and go out and peacock and do all these different things. Where, I mean, at the same time, there's a dynamic, there is a dance, but at the end of the day, there are very many women who very much would love to give to men. And I think most men maybe even convince women not to be with them, as opposed to going the other way around, where it's like, I think a lot of women, if they go on a date with a guy, they're at least somewhat open to the idea, or else why are they going on the date? and and then as they meet the man, that's when they start saying no. Whereas actually, if things just go in a smooth and flowing way, these other things take care of themselves. And so it's a very different dynamic. That, and as well, if the man realizes he has something to offer, uh, women then are also wanting to receive and asking for a man too. So I think there's many, many reasons why these kind of practices become important, both in the partner realm, but also too in the solo realm of just having this own balance inside yourself of being able to accept your full body as information rich and useful information that then you can actually trust to help guide you through situations, as opposed to shutting it off as a way to sort of protect you and to suppress. And then lastly, I think the other effect then is on a societal level, that there's a different embodiment to masculinity that ends up happening, and as opposed to going out and needing to conquer and take, one begins to start thinking of building kingdoms and having responsibility towards others, because there's both an image internally and also externally of a different relationship to the world than this quote unquote toxic masculine. So
Yeah. This has been such a great conversation. And I would really love to close it off with, if you're open, if sharing your 3 top self-pleasure tips. Like for you as a man, like what do you do when you wake in the morning and how you bring your sexual energy to forth?
Well, for myself, I actually came into this work via martial arts. Mm-hmm. So any type of movement and breath for the whole body, even if it is for a run, just to be getting everything to circulate and flow, I think is really key. And then there is actually self-pleasure practice, which is, any of the manual techniques, because these things as well develop a sensitivity in the hands that then are going to translate when working with a partner. And I would say lastly then is actually taking up a practice, which is, when we talk about armor, a lot of times nowadays it's speaking into the physical body, but this originally was the character. And the character DeArmouring, I think a very important practice is, as a man, when you see that there is something beautiful around you, being able just to share that from a completely non-needy space, and seeing the way that people react when you just simply appreciate their beauty, and in conversations actually search that out in them without needing anything, without expecting a date or telephone number, but just simply giving it that generosity, seeing how that is received, that in and of itself can be quite life-changing, in the sense that it challenges maybe the persona that we suppress, because we think, oh no, if I were to say that, it's going to actually push this person away, which in reality, it actually lights them up. Mm-hmm. So I think that those would be those would probably be some of the 3 areas there: taking care of oneself, being able to find one's own pleasure in oneself, and then also being able to give pleasure. Kind of cover the gamut.
Thank you so much. When I was in Canada last year, like when we were talking about the appreciation of the masculine, if I see someone that's really, if I see a masculine body they're shining, like the way that they laugh, the way and if the opportunity arises, I do that. I tell them, it's like, you're very, very, beautiful looking man. It's like the way that you're taking, just things like noticing things and being able to give, to I think give feedbacks, not actually, because we're not in a relation, like a relating type scenario. So just for example, I was with a girlfriend, she came from Australia to visit me when I was in Vancouver, and we were going down, we'd come out of the train, and we're walking down the street, and it's like I could see this man's light before I even knew what he looked like type thing. There was this beautiful masculine energy walking up the street. Now, he obviously went to the gym. He spent all of this time looking after his body, his physical appearance. He was dressed. I do love a very well-dressed man. He was dressed impeccably, but he was also really he didn't have this sort of sense of, the Wall Street arrogancy, although he had like the beautiful shirt on and the tie on and the beautiful pants, but he felt really soft. And I couldn't help myself. I just went up and I kind of walked so that I walked in front of him, and I just went, oh, excuse me, can I just say something to you? And I had my hands up like this, I didn't want to go, just, do you mind stopping? And he's like, oh yeah, sure. Thinking something was wrong. I said, I just really want you to know that I think you are really, really beautiful, and you feel really soft, and I could feel you, I could just sense you walking up the street. You are a very, very beautiful man. This guy, he said no woman's ever said that to him before, is what he was saying. And he actually stood there for a while, breathing in, and he had tears in his eyes. I said, this is incredible that no one's told you that. I said, I just want you to know that that's how I see you. And keeping my energy to myself. The whole thing is there was no thought from me that we needed to connect afterwards or anything. And I was so fucking appreciative to be walking down this dirty, grimy cement street. We just come out of the train, which is always horrible. And then there's this vision coming towards me. I'm like, oh, I'm so blessed. And just to be able to tell him and walk by and just thank him and say, thank you. Have a beautiful, beautiful afternoon, and walk off. And just to give that gift, because I'm receiving a fucking gift. Are you serious? Every time I see a gorgeous man, even beautiful women, it's it's such a gift for the eyes to feast on the beauty of the world.
Yeah.
So to be able to say that, I say it to women as well. When women are beautiful, and when they, especially when they've taken on this time for their appearance, and they've got this incredible dress on, it's oh my God, you need to know how beautiful this is right now. But I think one thing, is an absolute shame that men are not honored in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we also, when speaking to women, not so much now, I was finding about, 10 years ago, speaking groups of women, and women are kind of well, men don't really need that. They don't need, and it's they so do. We all need to know, that we're loved, that we're cared for, that we're seen. We all, it's a human experience to know that we've been seen and received. So it's one of my favorite practices. So tell me.
Well, keep it up. I think this is excellent.
And the thing is, when people say, wow, isn't it uncomfortable, it's it's how we hold our energy. It's you're talking about the generosity of the masculine, being able to see beauty and express beauty and gratitude for it with an energy that's not leaky. It's for me, it's always I hold my hands on my heart, and I keep my, thank you, and make the move to walk off, not overstaying the moment, not well, okay, now you've got to tell me, or now what do we do? It's I just want to tell you right now, have a beautiful day, and moving on. And just really allowing that moment to be contained in what it is, and there's no expectation. So yes, come and walk a street near me. Just find out where I live and start walking up and down the street until you run into me.
That would explain all the men that are walking up and down your street, I guess.
Oh, I thought they were picking mangoes. There's mangoes everywhere right now. I thought they're just looking for mangoes. But yes, the masculine, the gift is to see, to be seen. And I think it's, as you talked about before at the beginning of the conversation, we actually are quite the same. Our needs are very similar, because it's the human experience. Thank you so much for being here with me today in this incredible conversation. And thank you for gifting all of your wisdom. And I'm going to, for you guys, I'm going to be including the DeArmouring course that Aaron has created, which is fucking phenomenal. That's all I can say. It's phenomenal. So it'd just be really great if you go ahead and look at that and feel into that. But yeah, this work is such incredible work, and it's so needed, especially now where we're at right now. We look at the planet. What's needed is us to be back to ourselves.
Well, I look forward to getting a chance to do when this airports and everything open up. We can do some kind of live event or workshop and
Yeah,
bring
yeah,
some couples together. I think it'd be beautiful.
it'd be
But in the
awesome.
meantime, though, definitely have the opportunity to, yeah, be doing the work, which I think now, especially as ever, I think it's so important that
Mhm,
we are able to do both our solo practice, but then also really investing in times in our relations that we do have, as opposed to just simply outsourcing, as we're now a lot more time at home. How is it that we do that?
mhm,
I think there's a lot of keys that are there and a lot of healing and growth that can come as well.
mhm, mhm.
Well, Melissa, it's been an absolute honor to be here. And thank you so much for the work you do. I mean, just hearing that story, what you did for that man. And I just think it's so important. And yeah, a lot of guys are really great guys and they're just never taken the time to be appreciated, or because he's beautiful, then he should never have to be told this. But just to have someone to give that gift can mean so much. And you know, we all learn, yes, to provide ourselves a certain amount of self-love, but you know, just we're all been born and brought into the world and received, you know, our parents love or didn't, and that makes the difference. So we love because we have been loved, and so doing that and embodying it is just giving gifts and opportunities to others. So I just want to really thank you for the work that you're doing and tell you to keep going on, sister. And yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
well, it's been an absolute honor. Thank you so much for having me.